this unit is pretty important. It appears a lot on the EOC exam in the end of May. So you all need to really, really be paying close attention, Braylon, Natalie, everybody who's on that. Need to be paying close attention today. Who needs a notebook? You need something to write with. It's up there. Everybody needs something to write with and write on. So as people start to get settled, I just want to say, again, thank you all for being here. I know I'm definitely starting to hit a wall, feeling tired, but thankfully we've got spring break quickly approaching. So we've got 8 more days of school if you include today, until we get a good little chunk of time away and some time to relax and rejuvenate our bodies and our minds and our spirits. So I know we're looking forward to that, but we've got 5 days this week, and these will be an important 5 days. So I hope you got off to a great start and went ahead and knocked out the warm-up. Keep in mind, guys, that I believe in all of you and your potential to pass the class. I believe in all of you and your potential to pass the EOC exam. Not only pass, but do well in the class and on the EOC exam. We are still pretty early on in this quarter. We've only had one really short unit that was 4 days last week. So if you find yourself already falling behind, let's come up with a plan. Contact me and let's talk about what we need to do and what I can do to help you stay on track. I don't want to see anybody falling behind. I want to see everybody engaged, having a good time, learning some cool things. We've got 3 really important units coming up if you include this one. And then we're going to take some time to review a little bit for the EOC exam. So it's really getting into crunch time now. So I want you all to take time at the beginning of every week, think about whatever it is you're trying to accomplish this week, and start to put yourself in a position to do that. Think about, who do I need to contact? Whose help do I need to seek? What notes do I need to consider taking? Even if it's outside of school, if you're going through something with your family, whose help might I be able to enlist in order to kind of think through what my potential solutions could be? If you're going through something with your friends, is there another friend who you can involve? But you should always, and this is good as young people to get in the habit of doing, you should always take time at the beginning of the week to think through, what am I anticipating will happen this week? How can I put myself in the best possible position to succeed? Whose help do I need? What mindset do I need to be in? Check in with yourself and figure out, like, how am I feeling this week? Do I feel motivated, or do I need a little boost? Have I been feeling tired? Was the weekend restful for me, or do I need to find time in my schedule to get some rest this week? Okay, so it's always, always, always a good idea to check in with yourself, establish some goals at the beginning of the week, and think about what it's going to take to achieve those goals. All right. So the title of today's lesson is Introduction to Inheritance. Inheritance is going to be a topic that we discuss basically, for the majority of this week. So we'll just provide an overview today. We've got a really important concept that we'll learn about today called Punnett squares. Some of you may have heard about it before. The objective is to predict offspring ratios based on a variety of inheritance patterns. The first one we'll talk about today is dominance. It's just simple dominance, complete dominance. And the essential question, how can we predict inheritance patterns using known information about the parents? Today is March 22nd, 2021. It's a Monday. Hard to believe that we're only just over a week left in the month of March. Time is really flying. It's the second day of our 7th unit. Let's go ahead and jump into it. All right. So the purpose of Punnett squares is to simulate random assortment and fertilization. Fertilization is the key here. We're simulating fertilization in order to determine potential ratios for offspring genotypes and phenotypes. So Definitely include the word fertilization. I know it's not highlighted, but we should also be writing that as a part of our notes. Natalia, do you have some way to take notes? Oh, yeah. Oh, you got it? Cool. So you all will get in the habit of doing this relatively quickly, but a Punnett square literally just looks like a table with 2 columns and 2 rows. I'm going to explain everything that you're seeing as a part of that image eventually. Okay, so I see folks are still writing. If you're done writing, or if you're at home and you're not writing, which everyone should be, what's the definition, or maybe even just the difference between the genotype and the phenotype? We should have notes about that from Friday. But what's the difference between a genotype and a phenotype? Somebody, anybody. I see I've got people who are writing down this whole Punnett square. It's not bad. It's not bad. You don't have to, but it's a good idea. Rudy, do you remember what a genotype is? Look in your notes from Friday. I think you should have written it down. You didn't write it down, Shada? You don't know what a phenotype is? You don't have it either, Rudy? Okay. Okay, so definitely write down that definition. So that I know you're drawing this whole intricate image. So make sure you write this down too. And those folks at home, if you didn't know what a genotype is, please make sure you write down this definition that I just wrote on the board. No, you just Does anybody at home remember what the three possible genotypes are? Good. There's, yeah, one of them is called homozygous dominant. Okay, well, then we also have, Ayana just told us HR, which is homozygous recessive. Good, thank you. And then we've got one more. Does anybody remember that last one? Good, heterozygous, excellent reading. All right. That might make it easier for you. No. Sure. I used to have so many markers. All right. So let's say that I have, let's say I have an allele on the letter G. What would the homozygous dominant genotype if I'm using the letter G? Remember, we get two alleles. Right? So we get two alleles from each parent. So as we can even see on the screen, we've got, well, let's not talk about the Punnett squares yet, but we get two alleles from each parent. So what does the homozygous dominant genotype look like? If I'm using the letter G, what would it look like to be homozygous dominant? Excellent, Ayana. Two capital Gs, two capital Gs. Okay, so what would it look like to be homozygous recessive then? This is a homozygous dominant genotype. So we use two capital letters for a homozygous dominant. What would it look like to be homozygous recessive? Two lowercase G's. So to be homozygous recessive is two lowercase G's. Brother, you got that? And what would it look like to be heterozygous? One capital and one lowercase. Now, what does the prefix homo mean? H-O-M-O. What does that mean? No, not two. But not different, but the opposite of that. Same. Homo means same. Good. So we've got homozygous. Homozygous. The reason we call look up real quick, Sade. The reason we would say homozygous is because they are the same, right? In this case, they're both dominant, but they're the same size. They're both capital. Make sense? In this case, they're still the same, but they're recessive, so they're lowercase. So what do you think the prefix hetero means? Different. That's why one is capital and one is lowercase. Got that? Does that make sense, Rudy? Ferlin, does that make sense to you? Okay. Neftali, are you? Huh? Okay. This is important stuff. Okay, and then okay, so a phenotype would be the physical characteristics. That's all. You're not. You need to come sit up here, Johnson. We all look at almost. Yeah, I'm writing stuff on the screen. I can see right here too. Okay, you can see it. So, make sure you write it. You have to actually write it down, though. Trust me. You want to be able to come back to this. So this is what we mean when we say genotype and phenotype. Now they describe the same thing. I got a good question from Ardesia on Friday. Is she still in this call? I think she just jumped out for whatever reason. But I got a good question from Ardesia on Friday. We've got to recognize that the genotype and the phenotype describe the same thing. They describe the same thing. That's like me saying Sade versus me saying Miss Stevens. I'm describing the same person. Or me saying Mr. Jones versus me saying Principal Jones. I'm still talking about the same person. I'm just doing it in two different ways. Same thing is true with genotypes and phenotypes. I'm talking about the same thing. I'm describing something about an individual. I'm just doing it in two different ways. For example, I might want to describe the hair texture of an individual. And I could do that by describing their phenotype and saying that their hair texture is curly. I could also describe it using their genotype, describing their genes, and say, oh, this person is heterozygous for hair type, which gives them curly hair. All right, so same thing. I'm describing the same qualities, but in two different ways. It's important that we're kind of clear on that. Any questions at this point? I know I'm blocking the board for those of you who are at home. Wait, are there any questions about anything we've talked about so far? Okay, I'm going to trust that you folks at home are still paying attention. Let's move on. All right, so here's a Punnett square. Here is your Punnett square. I do want you to write down the steps to solving Punnett squares, and we're going to follow these steps. The first step is to make a key. Make a key. So let me walk through this. Does anybody still need to see what I have on the board behind me? Do you need this, Fraylin? Sade, did you get this? You can't even hear me? Can you take one ear out, please? Thank you. Can you just take one ear out? Thank you. I appreciate it. So did you get all this behind me? Okay, so I'm going to erase it. Rudy, you got this? So step number 1 is to make a key. All right, that's visible. Okay, so in your key, what I would recommend you write, you want to figure out what the dominant allele will be. You want to figure out what the recessive allele will be. And then you also want to write information about your 3 genotypes. Rudy, what are the 3 genotypes again? Good, excellent. The 3 genotypes are homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, and heterozygous. You want to include information about all 3 of those in your key. Okay, so write this key out. Actually write this. Rudy, I want you to actually write the key that I'm writing. Okay, so let's look at, I'm going to use color green instead of blue here. I'm going to use green instead of blue. What's the dominant allele in this case? Capital T, excellent. And what is it, what trait does that give you? Tall, wonderful, Rudy. So Rudy just told us that the dominant allele, and the example that's on your screen right now, is represented by a capital T. And that allele is going to code for tall. So in my key, I'm literally going to write where it says dominant, I'm going to write this capital T, and in parentheses, I'm going to write tall. I want to know what allele, what letter am I actually using to represent the allele? And what does the allele code for? It codes for tall. So what is the recessive allele in this case? Sade, what's the recessive allele in this case? I don't think you. Yes. The lowercase t. Good. And I love how you looked in your notes too. That's good. What trait does the lowercase t give us? What does it represent? It's going to be short, right? Because tall is the capital T. So it's going to be short here. Okay, so what would my homozygous dominant genotype be? What would my homozygous dominant genotype look like? Oh. It is going to be capital T, but how many of them should I have? Good, good. We always have two. We get one from each parent. And then, Rudy, what is my homozygous recessive going to be? How many of them? Is. And then, Sade, I'm coming back to you for this next one. What is my heterozygous genotype going to be? Capital and lowercase. Good. All right, so the folks who are here in class with me just helped me to figure out what each of my three genotypes is going to look like. Homozygous dominant looks like two capital T's. Heterozygous looks like one capital T and one lowercase t. Remember, hetero is a prefix that means different. So we've got two different alleles. One that's the dominant allele, the capital T, and one that's the recessive allele, the lowercase t. And then lastly, I also had a homozygous recessive genotype. Rudy, who's in class with me today, told me that that's two lowercase t's, two lowercase t's. All right. But more than that, I don't want to just know what they look like. I don't want to just know what the letters that I should be using are. I actually need to know what traits these genotypes give me. What is the phenotype that is associated with these genotypes? So with homozygous dominant, I've got two capital T's. That's my genotype. What's the phenotype that I'm going to get from that? Sure. And I'm kind of you guys feel right now. What phenotype do I get? Today is telling us that the heterozygous genotype is going to give us tall and short, but that's not how it works here. We can only be one of those two things. We can't be tall and short. We can just be tall or short. But remember, the reason we call, Sade, listen to this real quick. The reason we call the dominant allele dominant, Braylon, listen to this really quickly. The reason we call the dominant allele dominant is because it dominates the recessive allele. So anytime we see that dominant allele, that's the trait that we're going to get. So we've got this capital T here. It's going to dominate the lowercase t, and the trait, the resulting phenotype, is going to be tall. successfully, this process is going to be so easy for you over time. You need practice. But if you can successfully and consistently make good keys, accurate keys, everything else is going to come easy. Okay, so the second step is to split the two parental genotypes on the outside of the box. Then the third step is to combine the alleles in the box. One thing that you'll hear me say when we talk about combining the alleles, you'll hear me just say, do the cross, or just cross. Just do, cross the parents. So we call this doing the cross. Sometimes you might hear me say, cross a parent who is homozygous dominant with the parent who is heterozygous. That literally means just make the Punnett Square and figure out what goes on. The fourth step is to determine the ratios, or just answer the question, whatever it's asking. Fourth step is to answer the question. All right, we're running low on time quickly here. Okay. So we've got a good example here. It says green leaves are dominant to yellow leaves. Green leaves are dominant to yellow leaves. So our first step is to make a key. Now, we basically already have the key written out. I'm just going to delete, or I'm going to erase it. You can leave everything up. You need this information. I'm going to erase this stuff. Okay. So green leaves are dominant to yellow. I'm going to use red instead of yellow. I don't have a yellow marker, so I'll use red. Green leaves are dominant to yellow leaves. So what is my dominant allele in this case? What letters do you want to use? Not yet. Let's get through this first example. Green leaves are dominant to yellow leaves. What letter do we want to use, guys? You want to use an L? Okay, let's use, okay, we're using G's here. Is that okay? Where is it? I don't even know if I'm supposed to be letting you walk around. Can we get through this first example, and then I'll call somebody for you? Thank you. Did you have a question, Rudy? Okay. So which one of them is the dominant allele? G, the capital G. And what trait does that give us? Green. And Braylon, what's the recessive allele here? Yellow, good. Okay, so Braylon, what is my homozygous dominant genotype? Good. And what phenotype does that give me? Green, excellent. Okay, shut in. What is my homozygous recessive genotype? How many of them? Good. And what phenotype does that give me? Yellow. And Rudy, what's my heterozygous? Good. Capital G. And then what phenotype does that give me? It still gives me green. Excellent. So you got your key? You already got that? Cool. So that's step one. We've successfully done step one. Now we're in a much better place to move on and answer this question. We don't even have a question yet, but we've got a good key. So we're in a great place. All right. Now, in this question, again, it didn't really present a question, but we're told that the mom has, what kind of genotype is that for the mom? Fraylin, what genotype is that for the mom? That's her phenotype is yellow. What's her genotype called? Yes, homozygous recessive. Good. And what is the dad's genotype, Rudy? Heterozygous. Good. So step two then tells us the parents' genotypes go on the outside of the box. I didn't leave myself enough room here. Are you all good if I erase the steps? Did you already write the steps down? Okay. So I'm going to write mom's genotype on top of the box. Rudy, or actually Fraylin, told us that mom's genotype is homozygous recessive. That's two lowercase g's. We can actually see that on the screen. Sade, I really want you to pay attention to this. It's important stuff. Yeah, I know you want to go ahead. Go get your purse so you can come back and pay attention. Sade? Yeah, because this is really, really important stuff. I'm going to write mom's genotype on the top of the box. Two lowercase g's on top of the box. I'm going to write dad's genotype, which Rudy told me is heterozygous, on the left side of the box. So there's one capital G and one lowercase g. That's why he's heterozygous. Now, our third step, I know I erased the steps, but the third step is to actually do the cross. So now we want to actually, within our Punnett Square, we want to do the cross. Now, this can be a little confusing, but I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Oops, skipped a big step there. Hold on. Doing the cross just looks like this. Up here, I'm going to drop this G. Look up, Fraylin. I'm going to drop this G into this box. And then I'm going to slide this G over into this box. In this box over here, I'm also going to drop this G down. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to slide that G over into this box right here. I'm going to slide this G over into this box right here. I'm going to do the same thing with the remaining alleles. That G up there is going to get dropped down into this box. And this G right here is going to be slid over into this box. And then I've got one more box to do. That G gets dropped down. That G gets slid over. Now, the interesting thing about these boxes is that they represent offspring. Okay, so we have two parents. When we do these crosses, when we actually fill out the Punnett squares, where we're simulating fertilization. So we're saying if this mom and this dad come together and they mate, they make offspring, what are their offspring's genotypes going to be? What are the possible genotypes for these two parents if they have offspring? Okay, so we've got 4 boxes to represent the offsprings here, 4 different boxes. That means each box represents 25% of the possible offspring. This box is 25, that box is 25, that box is 25, and that box is 25. Each box is representing 25%. Okay. So now that we've actually done the crossing, let's just make sure we got the same thing that I have on the screen. We do. Now that we've actually done the cross, now we want to analyze it. That's step 4. We want to analyze what we've gotten. So what we mean when we say analyze, we want to know how many of each genotype and of each phenotype there are. So I'm going to tilt. Oh, you can see that. Actually, I guess I could just write it over here. Slide this over. So ready. I'm going to push it over here. What percentage of the offspring are homozygous dominant? Homozygous dominant? 100? So the offspring are inside of these boxes. We've got 4 of the boxes. How many of them are homozygous dominant? 0. We don't have any homozygous dominant offspring. There are 0 homozygous dominant offspring here. So 0%. What about heterozygous? How many heterozygous do I have? That's 50%. These 2 are heterozygous, right? And 2 out of 4 is 50%. And then how many are homozygous recessive? Also 50, because these two are homozygous recessive. So if we interpret these numbers that we just got, what we're saying is that if this mom, who is lowercase g, has offspring with this dad, who is capital G, lowercase g, there is a 0% chance that they will have homozygous dominant offspring. It's not possible. But there's a 50% chance that they will have a heterozygous offspring that will still have green leaves. And there's also a 50% chance that they will have a homozygous recessive offspring that will have yellow leaves. Okay, so this is how we analyze once we've done it. Once we've actually done the cross, this is how we analyze the results. All right, we can see the ratio. The genotypic ratio is 2 heterozygous offspring to 2 homozygous recessive offspring. The phenotypic ratio is 2 green offspring to 2 yellow offspring. Okay, we're not going to do that right now. It's difficult. All right, so look at this Punnett Square. Can you set it up in your paper? Try to do this one, Fraylin. Set up this Punnett Square on your own, and then I'll come around and check it in a second. But we're looking for the genotypic ratio, and if you're at home, you should still be doing this on your paper as well. Are there any questions from anybody at home? Because I know you guys haven't really been participating. Ayana, do you have questions? Brianna, Abraham, Cindy, Gloria, Chandler. No questions. Thank you, Brianna. Ayana says she's good too. This can be tricky stuff. I know we just need to get a lot of practice with it. Jason, any questions from you? Okay, so we're working on this Punnett Square. Once you set it up, once you do the cross, then I'm looking for you to tell me what the genotypic ratio will be. What's the genotypic ratio? Got it? Good. Okay. So everything is right inside here. This is not right. Okay, so you've got 4 offspring, right? 4 boxes. Are all 4 of them like that? Because you have 100%. Are all 4 of them homozygous dominant? Because you have 100%. Good. Good. Everything's good so far. Now we just want to know we just want to look at the genotypic ratios. Yeah, good. So how many? Good. Good. Excellent. Okay. So this is right. What about this one? How many of them are heterozygous? 50. Good. And then do we have any homozygous recessive? Both of them are lowercase. No. So 0. Okay. You can go sharpen your pencil back there, Freya. All right. So anybody at home, can anybody tell me what the genotypic ratio is? Can anybody at home, because both of my people who are here in person were able to get it. They told me the genotypic ratio. So can anybody at home help me out? Good, Brianna. Excellent. Now you're giving it to me in numbers, which is fine. But we can also do it in percentages too. But you are 100% correct. So if we actually do the cross, this is what we end up with. So everything that's the two alleles that are on top of the Punnett square, those get dropped down. The two alleles that are on the left of the Punnett square, those get swung over or slided over to the right. Inside of the Punnett square, that represents the offspring. So as Brianna told us, and as Fraylin and Rudy tell us, inside of the Punnett square, we can see two of the offsprings are homozygous dominant, and two of them are heterozygous, and we don't have any homozygous recessive in this Punnett square. We don't have any lowercase. In this practice problem, we didn't even tell you what the phenotypes were. We just asked about the genotypic ratio. All right, now here we're actually giving you something that you should be putting into a key now. We're giving you a trait. We're talking about hair color. We can see that based on the Punnett square, we've got one parent who is homozygous recessive and one parent who is homozygous dominant. So go ahead and do this Punnett square, do the cross, and tell me what you get. This time we're looking for the phenotypic ratio. So I want to know how many offspring have brown hair and how many of them have blonde hair. Brandon, can you do this for me? So set up your Punnett square. Don't forget to make a key. If you need to make your key, please make sure that you do that. I want you all to get in the habit of doing it. Yes. You don't understand the what? Okay, the brown hair versus brown hair. So this is why we try to make a key like that one. So we've got those three genotypes, right? Homodominant, hetero, and homorecessive. In this case, homodominant would give us which trait? Brown hair or blonde hair? Brown hair. What about heterozygous? What does that give us? Nope, not both. Hold on. It gives us brown hair, good. And what about homorecessive? Brown hair, good. So how many of your offspring have brown hair? All of them. And how many of them have blonde hair? Zero, none of them do. That's what it's looking for. Is that what you got, Rudy? Yes, 100%. Yeah. All right. Anybody at home? Can anybody at home tell me what is the phenotypic ratio here? How many have brown hair and how many offspring have blonde hair? We're looking for the phenotypic ratio here. How many offspring will have brown hair and how many will have blonde hair? Okay, maybe we're a little confused here. So the first things you should always do is, number one, make a key. They gave us a very simple key here, but it's missing some of the more important information that I think it should have. So really what we want to do is write out what each genotype is going to give us. Which phenotype do we get from each genotype? So the homozygous dominant genotype, that would be two capital letters, two capital B's. In this case, it's going to give us brown hair because brown is the dominant allele. The heterozygous genotype would be a capital B and a lowercase b. In this case, that would also give us brown hair. The homozygous recessive genotype, which would be two lowercase b's, in this case is going to give us blonde hair. All right, you need to have your key set up. This is the exact key that I think you all should get in the habit of doing. I saw Rudy make a perfect key that looked just like this. I want to see it happening for all of you all. This is how you'll be successful on these questions. Once you make your key, then you're actually ready to do the cross because we already have the parents' genotypes written on the outside of the boxes here. So in that very first box, we end up with a heterozygous genotype. In the second box, we also get a heterozygous genotype because we've got one parent giving a dominant allele and the other parent giving a recessive allele. In the third box, same thing. One parent's giving a dominant, the other is giving a recessive. We end up with a heterozygous genotype, and the same thing happens in the fourth box. So what this tells us is that all four of the offspring are heterozygous. If you had successfully made your key, like Rudy did, you would know that the heterozygous genotype gives you brown hair. So all four of the offspring in this case have brown hair, and 0 of them have blonde hair. Skip this. All right. We're going to have to pick up on this tomorrow, and I really, really want you all to be more interactive, especially for my people at home. We've got 4 minutes now. I want you to try to do the exit ticket. Try to do the exit ticket, please. It's going to ask you some questions about these Punnett squares. If you get them wrong, there are answer explanations. So make sure you read the answer explanations. There was supposed to be an assignment today, but we'll have to push that until tomorrow. Okay, so go ahead and take this time to do the exit ticket, Sade. And Rudy, try to do this exit ticket for me, please. We only have 4 minutes. Yeah, you might as well just keep it. The exit ticket is called U7D2. Unit 7, Day 2 exit ticket. You did it, Berlin? You did the exit ticket? Wow. Okay. All right, folks, have a good day. I appreciate you spending some time with me today. Make sure you come back ready to participate more. I need more than just 3 people. See ya. Have a good day. Have a good day.